within IT is making sure that we can give the guest a great journey throughout their time with Mattress Firm. We've been able to do that by reducing our checkout times by 20% within our stores. We were able to reduce our manual testing by about 80 to 90%. In our most recent release, we were able to introduce about 55 fixes, features, and new enhancements, which is huge.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another installment of ISV Success Live. My name is Brian Galicia, and I am the global ISV leader for BizApps here at Microsoft. And it's an honor and pleasure to be hosting our amazing Dynamics BizApps partners in our ecosystem on these Monday events, because what we attempt to do, and this is episode 91, we really try to drive awareness to amazing ISVs doing impactful business outcomes with our partners and our end customers. And so Leapwork, and Klaus is no different. And before we get to Klaus and do quick intros as I normally do, let me give everyone a quick orientation of the event. So the purpose of these is really for education, to understand who are our ISVs in our BizApps ecosystem and the amazing innovation that they do. As you go through the conversation, if you're watching live, you're watching a replay, we'd love to hear where you're watching from. So if you want to type in the window where you're watching from. So for example, Klaus is doing this from Connecticut. I'm in the state of Washington on the other side of the United States. So we'd love to hear where you're watching from. And towards the beginning, we'll do a quick shout out for everyone. And so just put in the LinkedIn comments location and we'll give a quick shout out. The second is that if you find that there's content that's resonating with you and you have a question, this is a live event. So happy to ask Klaus a real-time question if there's time towards the end, but also welcome the feedback so that as you're listening, if something really is resonating with you, feel free to utilize one of the emoji icons, support, like, etc. That gives us indication that the content is really resonating. So without further ado, thank you so much, Klaus, for taking the time on a Monday to join me. And first thing I always ask all my guests, or well, two things I ask at the very beginning, is what's your role? And it's going to be interesting because, of course, I always sometimes find the co-founders or founder that actually built the company. And so maybe you can give a little background story of that as well. And then what's one thing not on your LinkedIn profile that you're open to sharing? So Klaus, take it away.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so I'm Klaus. I'm one of the two co-founders of Leapwork. I'm what people normally kind of think of as the crazy product guy. So I invented the product. And today my role is to advise and to make sure that we continue to innovate and grow where we want to be. But today we are, 9 years old, and we're about 400 people across the world. But we originated in Denmark back in 2015. And we've been talking about this recently. It's fair to say that we invented no-code visual test automation. Back in the day, and we had lots of fights with the whole world about this was the right way to solve this problem that everyone has. Is manual testing is still 85 to 90% of the way you do quality assurance, and we are set to just completely change that. Now, I actually have something that isn't on my LinkedIn profile that I think might be fun for the audience to hear. Back in the day, I co-founded a Microsoft partner. This was almost 30 years ago, that today is an inner circle partner and is making big waves on the European scene. But back then, there were these two brothers, Preben and Eric, who were early investors in my old company. And they had built this amazing product called Axapta. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that turned into Dynamics AX, which turned into D365 F&O. And during that time, actually, I met my partner in Leapwork, Christian Brink Frederickson, and I, we built the company together. He's a very, very dear friend of mine, and he was working for Microsoft at the time. So it kind of feels full circle, right? Microsoft is just very, very close to my heart. Yeah.
I love it, Klaus. So what an amazing story as well. And gosh, to go back and you're ringing true, because I've hosted a few people who have been in the ecosystem for so long. And when you're using those older terms, Axapta And people
Yeah.
are like, what's that?
Yeah.
Or when it morphed into AX, and of course, now that we know it as finance and operations or F&O, that evolution has really taken off. And I love how you talked about it, because of course, the headline for those of you who are watching this is making money, saving money with AI-powered visual test automation. And you think about it, people are like, test automation, is that, what is that? But part of it is that's a critical thing to help solve a lot of challenges before getting something live. And so that's a good segue into our next question, which is, what is the business outcomes? Like, for people who've never heard of Leapwork before,
Yeah.
you can spend a few minutes really talking about, like, what's the problem statement that you find that businesses are running into? And it can be an end customer, it could be another partner, because of course you can imagine we have other ISVs around the world that are building on top of the dynamic platform, where your solution innovates and drives these efficiencies. And so maybe you can spend some time talking about
sure.
the outcomes that Leapwork drives.
And that's true. Thanks, Brian. So, I mean, to make it very short, we make sure that core systems like D365 F&O and things like legacy applications, other big operational systems, even big iron, that they all function the way they were supposed to. Things built on Azure, like how do you make sure that things work the way they're supposed to? And we do that by breaking down the language barrier between humans and computers, so that you can tell your computer what it is you want it to do for you without having to express that in any technical detail. That's kind of the foundation for everything we do, right? That you should be able to just express what you want and not know how the thing was coded or any of the technologies behind it. You should be able to say, I want to click that button. I want to type 50 into that field over there. And I want to make sure that that thing turns purple when it's supposed to. We have a visual solution for that is AI powered and that works like drawing on a big whiteboard. And we find that that enables big companies to finally kind of set free the business knowledge that they have, and to move away from manual testing, which is what everyone has been stuck in since the dawn of the computer era. And so that's a very important thing for outcomes on Dynamics 365. I think it's important to say that Microsoft has this one version thing. That's a big and wonderful thing, where it's a mission that was introduced by Microsoft to ensure that all customers operate on the latest version of their D365 applications, and that helps create a better user experience and fewer compatibility issues. And being on the latest version means that customers use the most up-to-date security patches and features, and it helps protect against cybersecurity threats and data breaches, but it also increases the need for software testing. You have to be able to trust that when you have all these new versions that come out, that your software will continue to work, that your D365 customizations and your whole ecosystem continues to operate. And that's the core focus of Leapwork. That's what we do. And this shift towards one version and everything that's happened in the market, really, to many businesses, that's meant a shift in their testing approach. They've no longer been able to just do a little bit of testing or some coded testing in some framework that they can't really drive. They have to do something that's automated. And so that's what we do.
Well said, Klaus. I mean, could you think about it? The complexity of trying to explain that, is great, because it made sense to me. And I think about those innovations and the manual to automated stuff that happens. Before we get to the next question, maybe we can go deep, because I mean, the great thing is it's purposely built to run on the Microsoft cloud and leverage all these things. Maybe you could either pick one of your favorite examples. If I'm a customer engagement customer, or finance and operations, because you mentioned Exapta and AX, and or Power Platform, because that's the beauty too. It's purposely built for the solutions and on Power Platform. So maybe one of those examples where you're taking someone who's doing manual to doing one of those scenarios in Biz Apps. What's a common thing that you've seen where all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's saved hours or months or weeks of time?
I think actually the impact is dramatic. The video you ran before we started actually also shows this. Most of our customers, they say that they've had like a 90% increase in throughput. And they've saved, they've gone from having to do this incredibly difficult thing for months and months and months, and now suddenly they can do it in a couple of hours.
I love it.
So it's a massive improvement for a lot of companies. I actually want to share something that is more on the innovative side. One of the things that are being deployed a lot right now is AI, obviously. And one of the things that we've been looking at very much is when you deploy systems that use OpenAI GPT-4, for instance, how do you make sure that they work? Right? How do you do testing? And in Power Automate is a great example. On the front page of Power Automate, you can actually just type in some stuff and say, I want something that runs every week, which sends an email and does this if something happens. Right? Which is great. Like that's one of the great applications of this new technology. But how do you make sure that it works? And so what we've done in Leapwork is we've found a way to say, well, you want to test AI, and you got to use AI to kind of do it. Otherwise, you won't be able to match the expectations. So imagine that you had a bunch of inputs and you could stick them in an Excel file. Anything you could ask Power Automate to do. And then you also have a set of expected results. So when you ask for this, you can describe in just normal words, what do you expect Power Automate to do? And then we have building blocks on our visual canvas that can just take the input that you give, the outcome that it gave, the thing that appeared on the screen, and then take the expected outcome, put those together, and validate it with OpenAI on Azure. That's actually kind of spectacular. Once you see that working, you kind of realize that something fundamental has happened to how we build software and how we can deploy software in the future. And by using AI in a robust way to do testing, that just opens up a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, what a powerful use case as well. And you think about Gen AI and how Leapwork is on the forefront of doing some amazing things to leverage it to even make it scale even more on the capabilities you're doing. So it's a good segue into my next question, which is, what's been the experience been like? I mean, the great thing is, and you've been around the Microsoft ecosystem, Klaus, I mean, pretty obviously from what you described at the very beginning. So maybe you could talk a little bit about just what's the experience been like for Leapwork. Because I mean, I think the beauty of many ISVs or partners who evaluate, should I partner with Microsoft? And your example of how you really integrated a lot of the technology into the capabilities to extend these amazing outcomes to our clients are amazing. And then part of it is it's working with Microsoft people, whether it's our R&D team, our FastTrack team, or our selling organization. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what's just been, from your point of view, the partnership experience and partnering with Microsoft.
Absolutely. I'm super happy to, because we feel like it's a unique strategic product partnership. The BizApps team, we're out looking for the best test automation tool for automating regression testing for this new one version program. And we felt like it was just a match made in heaven, right? We are in close communication with executive management, with FastTrack, with the partner ecosystem, with customers directly, together with partners. And that drives a lot of product innovation, and it drives a heck of a lot of value for everyone who engages in this ecosystem. It's been, I have to shout out to Torsten Raunbach, who's our partner development manager. He's just amazing. He does a great job of introducing Leapwork to, where we are needed. GTM leads, leveraging initiatives like AIM and many other things. And it's just, it really feels like when we engage with FastTrack, with the partner ecosystem, that it creates a lot of really big opportunities, particularly for the partners. But someone in Microsoft actually said this, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's a win-win-win, right? It's a win, this partnership, for Microsoft, because now Microsoft can get all these important updates out to customers who've been lagging behind for fear of disruptions to their service. And it's a win for customers who can get all these security patches and new features, and they can trust that when they do updates, that everything will continue to work. And it's a big win for partners who can do more for their customers. They can roll out better business applications. They can do all the things that they've been kind of hampered from doing with this. So, I mean, from our side, I know we're a relatively new partner to Microsoft, but it's just really been a great experience and a lot of fast growth for us.
Yeah, I love it, Klaus. And I think you hit it spot on, because when you think about the innovation, part of it is a segue into in about a month, And we're going to have our next wave, because one of the things that happens at Microsoft is, especially in the dynamic space, twice a year, there's a huge update on the technology across all the different areas, CE, F&O, Power Platform. And of course, this year is no different. So there's a launch event in April. Leading up to that, of course, you hit the use cases. Hey, if you're a customer and you're trying to go do these things, consider Leapwork for that, because again, helps with the mainstreaming of it, especially if anyone is listening to this either live or replay, the manual efforts that go into that versus some of the use cases you described, Klaus, is amazing. And then the other one is for other partners, particularly ISVs. You can imagine one of the things we also require, like you as an ISV, but your peer group in the ISV space, we require that these ISVs recertify their solution on top of the Dynamics platform, because the one thing we don't want to happen is that have an ISV solution, and you mentioned it, you have a customer that have certain configurations or customizations on it, and then it gets outdated because we release something. Same thing would occur in the ISV space. And so with that, is that fair to say too, Klaus, that use case of other ISVs that are building IP on the ecosystem?
And I think what we see is many of the partners that engage with us right now are ISVs and have aspirations to become ISVs with the services that they've been providing for years. And like for us and for the customers and for the partners, it's really about taking kind of the code angle out of it, because up until Leapwork really, test automation has been about writing code. And that creates a gap between the people who know how the application was supposed to work, that worked very closely on the business side on why did we build this stuff. And then on the other side, some programmers who are very, very good at programming, but not necessarily tuned very well into, why does this exist, and how do we actually make sure end to end that things work. I think I forgot to mention that earlier, but for us, it's a super important thing that you don't just test one customization in D365. That customization probably exists because you have another business system somewhere that's driven by D365 F&O, or and so you want to be able to see everything across the whole tech stack. Something comes in from a mobile application, from a seller's iPad or something, it goes into D365, something happens, it triggers something in 2 or 3 other systems, and the end result goes back into D365. That end-to-end test effort, driven not by technology, not by by programmers, but by the people who understand what the requirements are. That's the game changer. That's why this visual approach is so important, because you can have conversations about what you're doing instead of just a few testers who know some code.
Yeah, and you're spot on, Klaus, because I've seen some of the screenshots and the power of, I think about, like, I'm dating myself, but the days of Visio, was sometimes you're trying to map up a business process visually. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what you're describing is like, if this happens, then where does it go? And you think about business process, either CRM or ERP, using just traditional industry terms. It's because you make a call, it goes out somewhere, it does its thing, and then eventually, to your point, the system of record is typically the business application, whether it be ERP, CRM, or the Power Platform, depending on what it is. So,
and you typically have to drive stuff across those applications during your understanding of whether the process works or not. It's not enough to just fire off some events in one system. You kind of have to follow it all the way through and back. So that's one of the key things. But and I would say again, like when we look at the customer stories, and you saw the Mattress Firm one, and I think there's another video later, what we see is examples where we have a strong Microsoft partner engaged with their customer, in this case Mattress Firm, but then they use Leapwork, and we may provide some professional services and make sure to get the ball rolling in the right way, but then the partner picks it up and it picks up speed, and suddenly you can create an immense amount of value for your customers. So it's really about getting the business requirements and the subject matter experts who have that front and center of testing.
And I love it, Klaus. I mean, that's a good segue too, because you think about the people that typically listen to these conversations, not just Microsoft people, that to understand what is the value of Leapwork, but you think about the end customers, that like a Mattress Firm that's listening, that may come across this going, oh my gosh, we're doing all this stuff manually and Dynamics and go do this. But you think about partners, we talked about the ISVs, but you make a great point to say, if I'm a software integrator, a system integrator, whether it be I'm globally or maybe an area, and I'm specializing in doing dynamics deployments, you hit a spot on. Like, you're going to run into this doing that regression testing, doing those things up front, and thinking about Leapwork as that go-to-market partner for P2P. I assume that's just kind of a safe bet where you're, because we never do, Microsoft very rarely does implementations. I mean,
that's right.
There are some exceptions, but very rarely, as you've witnessed, it's always done through our partner channel. And so if those partners are running into this, again, great use case. And so that's a good segue. With the 10 minutes we have left, Klaus, maybe you can spend some quality time, because of course you teased out at the very beginning when we started the conversation, we showcased Mattress Firm. And of course, when we end the event, we'll have another example from a partner lens, but maybe you can talk about the use cases from your favorite customer stories. Like maybe you could describe, if it was manual testing, what happened? Like, describe the use case. I mean, you described the use cases, but specifically to a customer, maybe some of your favorite customer examples.
I think it's funny, because I think we see the same thing across our entire customer landscape, because everyone has been struggling with this for 30, 40 years, right? That you have some people who are really good at understanding the business requirements, and they want to have some software built. And you have the other side who can build the software, but they are programmers and they don't necessarily align that well with the business requirements, at least not enough to trust that they can do the testing themselves. And so you have this middle layer where you have subject matter experts who know all the requirements. They know everything about why the software exists and what it's supposed to do in various situations. And these people are testers. They are enterprise quality assurance specialists, and they have not been given nearly enough tool sets and things to allow them to do their job properly. In fact, most of the world, up until we came on the market, were convinced and obsessed with this idea that people who had business skills needed to learn to code. And I've never seen that work properly, and I think I've seen the same thing across all of the different companies that we work with, that they attempt to do this. They know that manual testing is bad, because if you do manual testing, even if you have 100 people, some of our customers, they have 1,000 testers on just a banking application, for instance. But even if you set all 1,000 testers to start testing their test suite Monday morning, 8 o'clock, there's a developer who will check in some source code 10 minutes after 8. Do you restart your testing then? Like, what do you do? Because that one line of code or that one check-in could have corrupted the whole system. So manual testing continuously trips everyone up. Do you start it again every Tuesday or every Wednesday, or what do you do? And so everyone has seen that doesn't work. So is there something else we could do instead? Well, we could automate it. But all the tools that have been on the market, they are so technical that they feel like, and people started to build these no-code ideas, but they all kind of feel like thin visual layers on top of hugely complicated machinery. It's like a GUI on top of programming. And in order to drive that thin visual layer, you have to understand how the whole machine works underneath. So it kind of becomes visual programming. And that's very much the scenario that everyone wants to get away from, because visual programming is just programming. You still have to think like a programmer. And we want to get to the point where it's the business knowledge that drives the testing, because that's really the requirements for the software. That's what should be driving your test effort. And so that's the same thing we see across all of our customers, that finally they can set this business knowledge free, that the test teams that they have, who are subject matter experts in why the software exists, what it's supposed to do, how it's supposed to function under many different scenarios, they can finally, actually do their testing. And yeah, the whole thing is about reducing manual testing. Even today, 80% of all testing in enterprises happens manually, because there haven't been the tools enough, which is, I think, why we're growing so fast, because we have a solution to that problem.
Yeah, and I think part of the area that why you're growing so fast too is exactly what you're spot on. Because my first job, dating myself way back then, as an intern was testing. And I remember getting a test script where it was a Word document. This is back, I'm dating myself way back when, 1995, getting a big document to say, do these things and manually type in to see what happens. And so
but that happens today. That's still what big banks and insurance companies and manufacturers do today.
Yeah, I can imagine. But you hit it spot on, Klaus, where because some of the automation, even if you try to do it, is super complex, because if you're trying to go and emulate keystrokes or emulate data being entered, again, going back into some of the things I've seen of your solution, especially the experience, it's really visual, and it provides to say, if you're going to go do this, and then
it's intent driven. It means you want to type something into that field, and that thing has to come from that other system over here. Well, they're just building blocks. You put them on a big canvas and you wire them up together. And so which does something really magical to big organizations. It means that you can have conversations across the different functions about what it is you're actually doing, because everyone can decode visually what this thing is doing.
Yeah, I love it. And it applies to any industry. I mean, even though you showcased the kind of a retailer, manufacturer, it applies to anyone. I mean, any organization. And I think that's a very powerful statement, because testing is testing. I mean, you have to do testing. It's going to be different industry by industry, but the outcome is essentially the same. So it's a good segue into the very end, because it's hard to believe, Klaus, we're almost to the end of our time. And maybe you could talk about next steps. Like if someone was listening to this, whether they're a Microsoft employee, they're a partner, Microsoft partner, and or a customer, what would you recommend people do to kind of learn more about Leapwork and how to get started? If like someone, because I guarantee someone listening to this are going to go, we're doing all our testing manually. Maybe
Well, first of all, for the partners, I would say get in touch with either myself or my wonderful colleague Luke von Schreiber, who's I'm sure on this post as well. And we can show you how the world can look significantly different from what you're experiencing today. On the technology front, I would say Azure has not even, it hasn't even shown what it can become yet. I'm sure that is going to take off and become crazy with the integration of OpenAI. I don't know if the people seeing this have already tried using OpenAI on Azure. It's amazing, the things you can do. And that's also what's coming for us, a cloud-based SaaS version of everything that we do. That's big on our roadmap. And then, of course, OpenAI and all the AI things that you can do, not just prompts on GPT, but making sure that we can embed all this understanding of intent that you can get from these new services. I think that's the future. I think that once you can get to a point from our world, we do testing, right? So if we could understand the requirements, the intent of the requirements, we can get much closer to automated testing, right? Where we can just actually parse the requirements and then go figure out if the system actually performs to those requirements. That's big for us.
Yeah, and I love it, Klaus, because that's at the end of the day, one of the things I've always found, especially recently with our partners, is that, hey, the next steps, it is about AI. I mean, if anyone listening to this has not thought about how they're incorporating Gen AI and or Copilot scenarios, you need to, because it's a disruptor. It's one of those things that you'll get asked by anyone is like, hey, how are you incorporating it? Because the power of it is very powerful.
And I would just inject that with Leapwork, you can actually deploy these services in a robust way and actually assure that they work and function the way they're supposed to, that they generate the kind of result that you're looking for.
I love it. And so I'm going to flash up a couple of things. So one, leapwork.com, very easy. Take a screenshot of it. Unfortunately, you can't click on it in the experience, but just go to leapwork.com. That's a good starting point. And if you just go to aka.ms/leapwork, and I know this is, of course, a dynamics conversation, but just be aware, and Klaus alluded to it, Leapwork not only does things on Dynamics, it drives Azure consumption and it's a transactable offer. And so this actually points to, of course, you can go to AppSource and look up the solution, but this actually goes to their transactable offer on the marketplace so that you can learn more. And again, because this is LinkedIn, I encourage you to connect with Klaus on a message or his peer, Luke. If you're on the phone, Luke, feel free to go put that in there. I'm going to say, hey, Janelle, thank you so much. She put in a great website as well, leapwork.com, technology dynamics. It's a mouthful, but if you want to take a screenshot of that, or it's in the LinkedIn window. And then Kelly, thank you so much for making the time. Thank you for the shout out that I'm glad there was added value. So as we wrap up, any last minute comments, Klaus, before I end the show and run this amazing video, the other video that really showcases a partner point of view. So
yeah, I just wanted to thank you once again for giving us this opportunity and for speaking with me. And I look forward to engaging with anyone who wants to talk. We love showing off what we can do.
I love it, Klaus. So, well, thank you so much, Klaus, Leapwork, for the amazing partnership we have together. And enjoy the rest of the week, everyone. Again, we do these every Monday, 8 o'clock. We won't have one next week because I actually have a little bit of a conflict, but in a few weeks from now, there will be another one. So stay tuned. You can go to aka.ms/ISV Success Live to not just watch the one we just did, because once this ends, it's permanently there, but you can watch all the other episodes that we've done in the past. So thanks again, Klaus and Leapwork, and enjoy this video. Thanks.
Thank you.
Technical debt is a silent killer of innovation, and thanks to Leapwork, we've been able to move up the maturity scale by focusing on value creation projects, less technical debt, more drivers that'll change this organization. The ROI we've seen from Leapwork has been outstanding. We've seen a 10% headcount efficiency, a 90% reduction in bugs, and we've increased our throughput by roughly 3x. Personally, it's been very empowering to be a part of. Seeing my team succeed and hit their goals is a great spot to be in, and I have to attribute a lot of our success directly to the team at Leapwork.